Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the latest and greatest Vdriven Masterclass. Today, we're going to be
Mm.
talking about data-driven decision making, turning insights into growth. And with me, as always, is Luke Abbott, our CEO at Vdriven. My name is Wade Yenny. I lead business development and brand management here at Vdriven, and we're excited to talk to you today about data. I want to remind everyone that this is your first time tuning in. Um, this is very interactive, so we'd encourage you to enter some questions into the chat as we're going through. If we don't get to them during the
Mm.
conversation, we'll get to them at the end. We'll have space at the end for questions. As always, if you'd like to reach out to the Vdriven team, you can do that via our website. I'm sure one of our people that's working in the background will put that link up in the chat. So you can contact us there. But encourage you to stay for the whole thing because there may or may not be a surprise that Luke may or may not know about at the end. We'll see. But yeah,
There better be one. There better be one now, Wade, since you're putting it out there.
well, I'm just making sure the audience wants to stay with us for the whole time. So, but yeah, thank you for joining us. We're going to get started here. Luke, take it away.
Oh my gosh, data. I love talking about data, and ideally, at the end of this, if you feel scared of data, you will love data and embrace it. So let's dig in. Yeah, background for me, I used to own a food distribution company called Monterey. My team and I scaled it. We exited to KeHE. After working at KeHE a couple of years, I went to a beautiful place called Jimbo's and started Vdriven about 6 years ago. I've also been in the last 2 years an adjunct professor of supply chain at the University of San Diego in their School of Business, and also have the Reconnected podcast. So let's dig in. Um, Okay. Why data matter? Sorry. If you don't have data, you're flying blind. I talk to so many people like, hey, how's your brand doing? What's going on? Oh, we're doing great. And it's like, okay, well, what are the metrics? What's the velocity? And what is the expectation for the set? Are you achieving it? How are your promotional plan going? They often don't know. Like, no, I just feel like it's going great. I'm like, okay, well, without data, we don't really know how we're doing. And if we don't have a goal given to us by a category manager that we're trying to achieve, and then know when we achieve it, we're essentially flying blind. So my goal today is to open your eyes and let the rays of the sun go crazy. So data is your eyes to the market. Scaling CPG brands. So I'm thinking like companies from $0 to $10 million. So I'm speaking to maybe $15 million in sales. So I'm speaking to today. Access to data can provide competitive advantage and be your eyes to the market. And you don't have to buy Spins or Nielsen to get actionable data, is what that should say. And while I believe at a certain point, like $3-4 million in volume, you really need to have Spins and Nielsen. If you're smaller than that, and even if you are bigger than that, you can still do a lot with data that's available through other means. And we'll talk about those today. So I want you to think about data as your report card. And it's just like, I want you to be excited every week as data becomes available, every month as data becomes available. That's like, I want to know how the levers I pulled in the last month or over the last 6 months, how they are affecting my performance in the market. I know for me and the Vdriven team, like we do data analysis. We do these data deep dives for our clients, and there's like this sense of anticipation as we start those meetings. Like, how did we do? And I think without that, then again, it's just feelings all you got to go by. So key data sources. So there's a lot of words on here, but I'll break it down for you. So I always loved Wegmans. Wegmans gives me I want to be in Wegmans early in my brand's life story because I can get data not only on my brand but on other competitors in the set. I get the whole set of information, which is beautiful that Wegmans does that. Whole Foods Market, I can see really just my brand's performance. So with Wegmans, I can see my competitors' performance, often free or low cost. Of course, the challenge is you're only going to see retailer data. I think the second best source of data as you're growing would be distributor data, and it's the one available generally from day one if you're with KeHE, and certainly once you're on the SSA program at Unify, you have data as well. And so we have, I think I always tell brands to think about your distributor as a drayage company, effectively a 3PL. Yeah, they're issuing POs and they have an idea what they're ordering, but you need to be responsible as a brand for what's going on. There's no victimhood here, right? Like I get it. The distributor's going to make a mistake, but those mistakes, I should be able to catch them. When I'm getting a PO that doesn't make sense, I should be really aware what's in those distribution centers already, what demand is going on. and maybe even new demand that's coming on as well, right? I need to know that. I need to be the steward of my business. And with the data that K and Unify provide, I can certainly do that. I also can even calculate like a velocity, like an imputed velocity based on what's selling into stores. I can also identify voids. If certain stores aren't getting product or are not buying product, and maybe not even on shelf anymore, I can ascertain that also from distributor data. So there's so much power there. And certainly when you can afford it, and it's become much more affordable. They have programs for smaller and smaller brands today, but spins and Nielsen data is so core when you can get to that point. So it's literally what's going through the register. There are so many data points. We can carve data up by retailer, by region, by even by stores, depending on what you buy. Certainly it can be expensive depending on your cash, and it can be more complex. And that's oftentimes where a company like Vdriven is coming in to help a brand be able to make those make that investment in spins or Nielsen truly actionable and valuable. Certainly, the other areas of data would be consumer feedback and market research, and then merchandisers. Oftentimes, they're underestimated in terms of their ability to provide feedback. Like what's going on at store level? Where are we merchandised? Are we merchandised? And that data can also be really great when you're going back to category managers and asking for a plus out or a merchandising memo to get your product on shelf. So those are the 5 key areas of data. We'll dig into some of those. And I'm thinking about a brand that I worked with a number of years ago called Three Trees, plant-based milk. Um, this slide, without data to back it up, it's okay, right? It's this idea that like, hey, helping a category manager understand the 3 waves of plant-based milk. The first wave was there was this Tetra Pak. It was shelf stable. The second wave was this gable top, PET, refrigerated, had thickeners and additives. And then third wave is like Three Trees, right? Premium brand, 4 times the protein of most products on the market. And then when we related that then to another adjacent subcategory of yogurt in the dairy set, where you saw, hey, Yoplait became Greek yogurt and became even more upscale. This slide is 6 years old, but it's at the time this made sense. But then if I can back that up, and this is spins data in this case, is like, okay, well, there's like that first wave, second wave, third wave. First wave is shrinking, second wave, okay, and then third wave is growing. And guess what? Three Trees in this case, 6 years ago or 5 years ago, was dominant in terms of growth over Malk. Even though Malk is a bigger amount of sales than what we were looking at, we were able to identify a number where we dominated the category, dominated the country in a natural, which was our growth rate. So this slide here combined with this slide, it's like, oh yeah, okay, category manager, I see it. This is what's going on. This is what's going to grow my category. It's going to be your product line. I want to bring it in. So key metrics, let's instead of going through all of these, because this can be a lot to go through, let's just take a look at some key terms in spins, and I think they're very similar in Nielsen. This is looking at the subcategory of instant noodle and soup cups, shelf stable in the conventional category, it looks like. And we're looking at the number of dollars over a certain time frame, the percent change. This is always great. Like, hey, who's growing? Who's shrinking? It looks like Cup of Noodles is going backward. Ramen Express is going backward. Who's dominating? Top Ramen. Like, this is really important to know for the categories you play in. So you know who to benchmark yourself against and who to go after in terms of growing your product line. This is how many units were sold during that time frame, the units percent change over the prior period. And then ARP is really good to know. I love this one, especially with all the inflation going on. ARP is the average retail price, which takes into account also, certainly price changes at shelf, up or down, and also promotions. So I'm looking here like, okay, it looks to me that Nongshim is up 22% in unit change, and they also lowered their price by 12%, maybe being more aggressive on promotions. And I go, that's interesting. So this one overall is growing their units. Their overall dollar change is a little bit muted, but that's because they lowered their price, but it's driving some strong growth in the category. So it allows me to tell a story as I go through it about my own brand, and this is again spins data, or about other brands that I'm competing against, and it helps me figure out like what's working and not working in the category. The max percent ACV, ACV is all commodity value. It's effectively the whole market, and it's 100 would be the whole market, but it's not like every store is equivalent. Certain stores um, have much higher sales than others. And so it takes that into account as it's thinking about ACV. So like a Jimbo's compared to like a single Lassen store, for example, the Jimbo stores tend to be higher volume than most Lassen stores. So getting into the same number of Lassen stores versus Jimbo's is going to have a higher ACV. So it tells you, it's actually kind of saying which stores matter most relative to the total market that you could have for your product. TDP is total distribution points for your product. Um, how many points we see your specific SKU of yours on shelf. Base velocity would be velocity without taking into account promotions. And then that's actually a really good one, right? So if you weren't promoting for non-promotion times, what are we seeing to velocity? And you see base velocity non-promos shrinking for a lot of people. So it seems like it's very promo driven to me. That's why we're still seeing growth over here. So just high level, hit some terms for you. And let's dig in to distribution and retail expansion. So one of the things that having data can help you do is figure out like where to go. So we grow your category story. So if you think about what your job is as a brand, it's to be the brand that grows the category. That is that when a retailer looks into spins, looks into Nielsen, like what's that brand? They may be small, but they are like literally growing at 80% or 60% year over year, or month over month, or 12 weeks versus 12 weeks. And so this story is really, really important. It allows us to measure success. So ensure your products meets retailer expectations. I want to remind you that I always tell my clients this. It's so important. And every time we get a key account that's authorizing us, do we ask them for what the goal velocity is and then find a way to track that. For a very young brand, that might just be ideally not in an annoying way, but asking the retailer if they don't have a portal to share that data on a monthly or bi-monthly basis with us, so we have an idea of how we're going, how we're doing, and how close are we to that goal, and are we getting closer to that goal, and if we're not, making adjustments. This idea of own your space and be the category captain also allows us to identify underperforming competitors. So when I can see data, whether that's through spins or through a portal like Wegmans, and I can see a brand that is underperforming, I can leverage that when I'm talking with the category manager and talk about how they can get their fair share, their maximized margin and sales out of that set, and suggest additional SKUs to do that. And then depth versus width is something we talk about with our brands a lot too, which is prioritizing depth in high performing stores before adding store doors. And I have this up here, out of this morning, and it's like, well, for a younger brand, it's often really good to focus. This is one focusing in Southern California, where you're in like 27 Gilson stores, one Seaside Market, 4 Jimbo stores, right? 14 Bristol Farms, Lassen's and Mothers. And it's not that many stores. It's under 100 stores, but really own it there. And then I can track my data, ideally through working with the retailer, seeing the data through my distributor, or working through spins, and then become the brand that everyone wants us to go into. And then I also work with a lot of brands, oftentimes when they're meeting me the first time. Hey, we went into Sprouts, we went into Giant Eagle, we went into Earth Fare, and I think my point here is that I could go do that, and that's very wide, but often not deep. As an emerging brand, how can I make a difference at Kroger and Giant Eagle and Sprouts and Food Lion all at the same time? How do I create a velocity story doing something that wide and so shallow, with no depth to it? And so what I like to do is like become the brand that does this first, and then grow in a very intentful way. But how do I know when I'm ready if I don't have the data, right? If I'm not looking at the data. Key data insights for scaling CPG brands, um, competitive pricing analysis, right? How do your prices compare to similar products on shelf? Are you positioned as premium, mainstream, or value? And it's good to know these things as you're approaching the market. We have a number of brands that we work with that are like, hey, we're going to be super premium, at least for the first couple of years. We have to be profitable, be very careful about where we go. And we know we're going to be the most expensive in the set, but we're going to make it work. Impact of promotions and discounts, track lift in sales from temporary price reductions. Yes, so important to understand how effective our TPRs are. I'll dig more into this later on in the presentation, like analyzing our promotional effectiveness. And then testing price elasticity, I also will get into later on in the presentation. And in fact, I'll dig right now into optimizing retail pricing. There's a case study that I created about this fictional bar company called Pure Strength. Their goal SRP is $2.99. Similar bars in the set are $3.29 to $3.79. The retailer gross margin 45%, distributor markup at 9%, freight factor to the distributor, so that this is an FOB, the brand stock. The distributor is picking up, and there's about an 8% cost of in terms of the sell price of the distributor, 1.08. Sorry, 8% would be the freight factor on top of that to get it landed into the distributor, and the COGS is 75 cents. So you don't need to remember all this, but just know that this is what was underlying it as we dig into the next slides. So with this fictional client, we were able to analyze the velocity versus retail price at various retailers who were carrying the product, and we tried to match them up the best we could. And the way we do that often is a Whole Foods average Whole Food store about 30% to 40% higher foot traffic than a Sprouts, and a Sprouts maybe 20% higher foot traffic than a Fresh Time. So trying to like equalize and normalize the data. This idea that the difference between like 279 here and $2 in terms of a retail price doesn't really give you that much more velocity. There's only so much of this product that the market will bear. But as you get higher than this kind of ideal price point, say 279, for example, the velocity drops off really fast. So that's just one thing that we could notice, right? So, hey, if we have a choice, we don't want to be too expensive for this bar. We'd be a little bit lower, but if we start getting above $3, it really drops off fast. And knowing that from the data is so important in helping us understand, like, that price elasticity of our product. Another step in this is like retailer revenue versus retail price. Not that we care about this that much, but in this example, the retailer revenue is actually maximized at about $24 per week per store per SKU at about $2.99. And then it's interesting for us to look at it and go, well, hey, if we maximize our margin dollars after taking into account that the freight factors dealing with the distributor, my cost of goods, at about $3.79. And so there's a difference here, right? Where the retailer maximizes at $2.99, we maximize at $3.79. And if we can hit the goal velocity that the retailer told us they wanted when we launched, then at $3.79, then we should go for it, right? If we're missing it, certainly we can come down lower if we have to, but maybe not all the way down to $2.99. So just these types of thought processes are facilitated only when we have data. And in most cases, but just for more clarity, like with spins especially, we would be able to do this type of analysis. Trade spend analysis, this is so important. If we think about for the average brand today is spending 16 to 22% between gross sales and net sales on the cost of distribution channel access fees, and then all the promotions and everything else we do with retailers. So it's a huge area, right? So evaluating the ROI of promotions is absolutely critical for us. We want to check on the executions, on the execution promotions as well while they're happening. I think so many brands don't do that, and it's so important that where we can get visibility on the shelf to make sure that the promotion is happening. I can't tell you how many times with retailers like Whole Foods, for example, where something didn't happen in terms of getting a promotion to actually execute, and we've been able to talk to the category manager and get it executed. Where if we didn't have those eyes, we would have just totally missed it, which would not have been great. This other part too about checking distributor portals to ensure sufficient inventories in DC is absolutely critical, right? There's a promotion coming up. Are the buyers buying enough? Is there enough in inventory to make sure that during the entire promo period there's going to be enough product to backfill? Last thing you want to do, like it'd be horrible to fall off shelf during a promotion. this time when we're supposed to be gaining new consumers, there's no product there. And beyond that, we have to now earn our way back onto shelf again. We can see that in many ways by just going to the distributor portal, and that's, not paying any more for it. Optimize trade spending, identifying the most effective levers. I'm thinking of a bar company I worked with where we were trying, um, you know, 299, 349 is everyday retail. And we ended up finding that doing an EDLP every day and being 2 for 5 ended up being what made everybody happiest. Retailer happy, drove a lot more volume, velocity. But that analysis is super critical. A lot of times that analysis is really only fully available when using data like spins and Nielsen. Now here's an example. This is one of my favorite examples to ever do. It's a beautiful, beautiful scenario. This is like happy. This is like happiest. The average velocity before the promo is 5.4 units per SKU per store per week. And then we get during the promo, it increases to 9.9, which is beautiful. But the real win here is that post promotion velocity is 6.8, which is, what is that? Roughly 20% higher than the pre-promo velocity. So that is huge if you think about it, right? That's a really good ROI. So a lot of people focus on what happened during the promo. What I care about is this. If I'm only seeing lifts during a promo, I have to dig in and think about what's going on, right? It's like, okay, well, am I very mature at this retailer? I've seen this happen a lot where we're going along executing the same promotional strategy we always did, but now we're getting less and less of a post promo velocity lift. Then I know, okay, I'm at a successful velocity. The retailer is happy. The promotions are not driving much more trial anymore. People are just kind of buying in. I might even see a decrease in post promotional velocity. That's a time when maybe I want to look at spending my money on secondary placements. If I'm in the freezer set, hey, is there going to be a bunker promo or something? And that's maybe it's $30,000 at Whole Foods, but for the fresh market, I'd be a better spend to spend the money there than to just do these TPRs that no longer are working. Another thing too, when I see with many brands, when I see the pre and the post promo velocity being the same, it's been when they're younger and not mature, it's like, okay, well, is the everyday retail just too high? That when it's not on promo, people don't buy it, or are people buying this product and just not liking it? Could it be a quality issue with the product? So again, with data, I have the awareness of what's going on to be able to kind of start digging into different hypotheses. In this example, let's see here. Yeah, so this is a 40% promotional lift, 10% post promo lift. Promo is successful than maybe a prior one. No execution issues. DC is fully stocked. No competitors went on sale at the same time. As a side note, maybe pro tip is I always like to ask like key category managers at Whole Foods or Sprouts or the bigger retailers, like, hey, is anyone else promoting at this time? And oftentimes they won't tell me who it is, but they'll say, hey, maybe you're better off waiting till next month, or maybe you do it a month early. It's always good to ask because our goal is in a promo for a scaling brand, especially in cases where we're not mature in the set yet, is to really drive trial. And when somebody else with a somewhat equivalent product is on promo too, we're now splitting the benefit of that promo between the two of us. So where we can promote when others aren't, and in a time during when people are more open to buying our product, that is a big win. Also, yeah, the TPR discount in this example was $2 versus $1. In this example, which has another slide I didn't bring in here, the velocity during the promo wasn't that high, and we didn't get much of a promo lift, post promo lift. That maybe we find that being a bit more aggressive gives us a much better return in terms of that post promotional lift, and that's something to be aware of. Voids, this is so important. I think it's something that so many brands don't have the space to really dig into. Is leveraging spins data, but also your distributor data to look for voids. We know that our average velocity of our bar is 4 to 5 units per store per week. You have a case count of 8, and 4 or 5 weeks go by, and we're noticing that certain stores haven't ordered in 6 weeks. That data is readily available from KeHE, and I can actually pull that down, and I can say, here's the stores where I likely have a void. And then I have a choice, right? And depending on the chain, I can call the store. I can talk to the department manager. I can ask them to help me. Ideally, maybe I'm sending that manager some VIP coupons, some swag to thank them for getting us back on shelf again. I'm noticing, in the data the next week, hey, they ordered it. I'm back on shelf. They didn't. I'm maybe sending a merchandiser or whatever I need to do to get back on shelf so that I get my velocity. I have that velocity. I get my volume up. Um, and then assortment gaps is another area where I can leverage data. I would say, I would say this one's really crucial. So many times we'll have a retailer who has a point of view of which SKUs to bring in, even if it's not like the SKUs you would have recommended. And certainly being monitoring data and being able to go back to that category manager and say, hey, you chose these ones, fantastic. What we're noticing is that the fair share, I call it, that what you could have gotten based on if you had our best SKUs would have been another $30,000 over the last 3 months versus what you have today. Are you open to looking at reassorting and carrying the best products we have? Again, that's where data comes in, or to be able to make that case. Especially, I would say, especially with SPINS data and Nielsen data would be ideal for that type of an argument. So let's see here. Fixing voids already covered. Assortment gaps, closing gaps. Yeah, I like that. Competitive benchmarking. This is another one. How do you compare your performance to your competitors? So identifying the category leaders and analyze the strategy. So I think this is really good. I think I actually have a slide on this. Let me just dig into this. So I call this fun with competitive benchmarking. This is SPINS data natural channel last 4 weeks ending 1/29/2023 versus prior period. And we're looking at the plant-based, looks like plant-based refrigerated set, that's RF. I'm looking at various subcategories, products that are probably in the same set, but they're thanks to the way Spins does it, I can see more clearly who my competitor is. So let's dig into and pretend that we are Big Mountain Foods. We are dollars, let's see, blood dollars change compared to prior period. We're up 12, it's like $12,000 versus the previous 4 weeks. And dollars percent change up 22%. Fantastic. TDPs, if you remember, that's total distribution points. So we're up 2.4% in my overall distribution points. And I'm promoting a lot. I think during or that month of January, which is a really big month in the plant-based space, almost everyone promotes, like 80%. 80% of the dollars I sold were on promo in the entire natural channel. So let's compare that to like an Abbott's Butcher. So Abbott's Butcher, they are really close to us in sales. Their dollar percent change is a little bit lower, like almost half of what our growth was. Their TDP growth is a little bit less, and they're a little bit less promotional. So that's good to know. We're more promotional. We are growing faster. I'm not that worried here. Let me go down here. And again, this is grounds to grounds. And let's look at the other grounds would be like Impossible. Impossible, 63% of their sales were on promotion, and they are having even less growth. And their TDP growth was also more anemic, less than half of ours. So I could look at this and say, well, maybe one of my hypotheses are that being more promotional in January could be one of the reasons that I'm growing faster, on top of the fact that I maybe have better packaging or branding. But being able to dig into that is really helpful. And if I'm Big Mountain, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe I want to expand into some additional subcategories. I could look over here, and again, this is only a 4 week analysis. I'd want to look at 4 week, 12 week, 52 week. But let's see, where would I want to focus in? Looks like dogs are growing really fast. So maybe I want to look at creating a hot dog. I'm not saying that you'd make your decisions solely on this number, but as you can see, there's a lot that I can dig out of just this one page of data relative to how I'm operating my brand in the marketplace. But this data overall seems overall very positive for Big Mountain Foods, at least that last year in the month of January. One insight that we were able to get through a recent meeting we have with Spins, actually in this space, is that most of the plant-based brands assume that January is the best time to promote. But by digging into data, we actually found that the biggest month of the year for plant-based meats is December. People are coming over to your house or traveling. I need something for Uncle Ben who's vegan. There seems to be there's actually more sales in December than there are in January. And so if you notice here, everyone's promoting except for Tofurkey, it looks like. Tofurkey and Five Star Foods and Tofurkey, yeah. So in this case, I would go, everyone's promoting. And as I said earlier, one of my goals in promoting is to drive trial. But if everybody's promoting, then how do I claim a new consumer? So being able to access this, like in this case, spins data, I could have ascertained, hey, last year I noticed December was busier than January. Let's do the promotion in December. It really matters, right? If I can promote when no one else is promoting and someone goes and people are hungry for a product like mine, and I'm the only one on promo, which one do you think they'll give a shot to? Especially if they don't usually buy that kind of product. So just some things to think about. It's also important to be able to leverage data to understand the whole story, right? So it's like, so growth at competitor X is driven by multiple things. So, hey, 52 weeks, a year ago, they ended at 1.9 million. Now they're about 2.7 million. That's a lot of growth. Was that big? Oh, they launched a couple of SKUs. Well, great. Okay. They had a new innovation, drove a lot of that growth. They also did a price change and they increased their price, or they did less promotion. Their net velocity actually decreased, which isn't that unusual that they're adding new stores, but something to be aware of. And they actually lost a little bit of distribution too. So it's great to kind of understand like what's going on. Now they're not just growing because their velocity is growing on their existing product line. No, they added most of the vast majority of their growth. It came from the fact that they added a lot of new SKUs, or at least one new SKU that did very well. And I think it's good to know what's driving that. Regionality, just at a high level, what I used to do this with I do this with a number of brands where it's like, okay, we've already got to like 30, 40% ACV, and now I want to kind of be really intentful about like controlling regions. And then I'll look at a region and say, oh, my number one competitor is really focused on the Northwest. Then I have a choice to make strategically. Do I want to go after that competitor in the Northwest, or knowing that they're really focused there? And knowing that's actually a relatively small region, maybe I go and focus in Southern California, right? So maybe I have a choice, right? I have limited dollars. Do I go waste those dollars going head to head, or do I go to a place where maybe my competitor isn't strong that even matters more in the market? So there's a lot to think about in terms of regionality. Also, even in terms of like where we want to launch our product. I remember working with a key category manager at Whole Foods growing a plant-based brand. And I was like, I want to go to the Northwest. He's like, no, you don't. Or he's, it's not going to be great for you. I want to go to the Midwest. No, it's not going to be great for your data story. And so there's also this idea of which regions in a kind of in a heat map are going to be most open to a product like mine to create this beautiful data story of my brand being the one that grows categories. Let's see here. Anything else I want to get into? Okay, this additional, this goes a little bit deeper, but it's like the idea that I could have different regional pricing, different regional promotion programs. I could have different products that I focus on in various regions. I can take a lot of different approaches. And consumer insights, we actually work with a company that does great consumer data analysis where they do it online and they'll like target like a Sprouts consumer and they can say, hey, what do you think about this packaging versus another? I think another area too is consumer feedback loops of like Amazon. I love looking at Amazon. If I don't see a rating of 4.2, 4.3 or above, I'm concerned, right? That's great feedback for you as a brand, especially if you're scaling and have fewer data points to look at. If I'm seeing a 3.6, and also, by the way, the category manager at Fresh Time is going to be looking at Amazon too at these ratings. You might have to fix something before you're really going to be able to maximize your velocity on shelf. And innovation is another one too, right? Being able to look at data to figure out, hey, where do we think that next white space is going to be, especially as I'm thinking about NPD or new product development. The case studies will be real brief here. This is just data and just trying to whet your appetite, especially if you don't have spins and Nielsen yet, right? It's like, okay, there's this story of I grew from like 20,000 up to 60,000 in volume in the last 52 weeks in the natural channel. It's like, okay, what drove that? Oh, there's this promo in April that had a nice post-promotional lift. I launched at Sprouts. Great. A new SKU launch at a January line promo. So just being able to tell the story and understand what really drove it if I'm like, oh, my brand's awesome, I'm just like growing, my promotional strategies are working. Well, yeah, maybe they are, but also you launched at Sprouts, right? So what is that whole story that's driving it? It allows us to make better choices going forward. Um, this was actually like a real example that we ambiguated, so we wouldn't give away the brand, but where we launched two SKUs at Sprouts Farmers Market, and one SKU clearly got to all the stores on the official launch week. The other one didn't. And what's fun here is that this is K Connect data. So I'm launching a brand into Sprouts, and I'm not seeing like equivalent. In this case, it should have been an equal amount going to the stores. I'm not seeing equivalent amount going out to the stores. I can then, work with Sprouts. I can work with KeHE. I can close the gap. The last thing you want to do, especially on a reset, is not have product in the store when the reset team is there, because then likely you won't really get full execution across all the stores until they come back and revisit that set, which could be 1 to 3 months later, or maybe even 6 months or a year, depending on the retailer. So this is just an example of where leveraging that free KE Connect data to make sure you're aware of what's going on and then managing your business is really important. Let's see here. This one here, the new SKU ranks third in velocity since the October launch. So the blue and the red are our SKUs. The grayed out are our competitors. And if we're looking here, we're saying, hey, this red one isn't performing as well as the blue. We know that it's equivalent distribution and it just isn't performing. Then I'm thinking, okay, is my price, and I think in this case, is the product the right product at the right time at the right price, and maybe things to dig into. So again, with this data, I can dig into this. I can do this type of data analysis with just my own brands, leveraging my KE and Unified data, or if I have spins, I can look at it relative to other brands. And let's see here. I'm going to skip right there, and I'll bring it all together in this final slide. The story. So let's look at a Miracle Noodle. So this is Vdriven, we buy spins data for I think about 18, 20 categories. And so this is one of the categories. This is what we can see. And I just want to let's say you're thinking about getting into this space of kind of like this low calorie pasta shelf stable area. And let's just take a look at a brand like Miracle Noodle, which is, second, very close second, right, in terms of this MULO channel. And yet you see the number one competitor is shrinking by 24%. Miracle Noodle's up 8. So I would say Miracle Noodle will overtake Palmini at some point soon. This is a 12-week period, so it's not just like a promo 1 month was going on. I can see that Miracle Noodle was 14 cents less than the competitor, and maybe that could be driving it. They're probably on average $3.99 on shelf, and Palmini is probably $4.19 or something like that. So maybe that $3.99 price point's ideal. I can see here the ACV is very equivalent, and you can see velocity has slowed down by 13%. Units per SKU per store per week has dropped by 13%. So that's interesting to see. And then like here, if I'm a Miracle Noodle, I'm looking at its skinny and saying, well, that one's interesting because they grew up 26% in the last year. So they're probably going to catch me pretty quick. Well, I'm catching Palmini. So Palmini is probably going to drop down to second or third. And then let's see if else I can see here. The promo is interesting. So what I can see here is that probably It's Skinny is like really driving this growth by spending more than double effectively in terms of promotional time. Almost half of their sales over the last 12 weeks were occurring on promotion, and they're hitting a much lower ARP, average retail price, than the two biggest players. So again, I'm just trying to help you to think through the story we can tell, and so then Miracle Noodle can decide, you know what, I have It's Skinny on my tail here, but I could say maybe It's Skinny isn't going to be able to maintain this level of promotion level. Like this is really, really putting the gas pedal down in terms of the amount of promotion they're doing, right? And then I could go, well, or do I maybe need to look at, certainly beating Palmini soon, and then maybe keeping It Skinny in line. Maybe I start aiming for a 379 or 389 on shelf if I can support that. So just anyway, I just wanted to show you some of the analysis that we're able to do by having access to Spins data. And with that, I think we have time for question and answer. So thank you very much. Wade, back to
All
you.
right. I was gonna say, Luke, take a breath. Geez, there's a lot there to unpack, and I was in my old category manager hat, buyer hat, VP hat on the retailer side several times throughout there. I would say, hey, wait. I want to let you know, but I'm not going to dig into the data that much for the purpose of what we're doing today. I know we have at least one question here from Kristen I'll get to in a second. I'd encourage anyone else that has questions, go ahead and put them in. This is the time for you to kind of participate in what we just talked about. And we'll go through kind of that. And as I said earlier, I think I'm going to throw a curveball at Luke towards the end here. We'll get to that in a second as well. But Kristen, it's great that you're here today. Luke, she asked such great info. How many months on shelf should you have before analyzing data to evaluate trends and or strategies?
That's a great question. So number one is I'm really leveraging distributor data before I launch as products moving through the supply chain to get into the retailer for a reset. Like, is it getting there? I had a brand out of Chicago that had a launch at a key national natural retailer, and the product ended up not getting plussed out, and they didn't realize it for like a month, and it was a refrigerated product that had a relatively short shelf life, and they ended up having to throw it all away. And so it's like you the not being the victim is I'm if it's going through KeHE, I'm in the KeHE portal. I'm looking at at what's going out to the stores every single day to make sure that things are happening. If they're not, I'm talking to KeHE, I'm talking to my retailer to make sure things are good. And in terms of like when like spins and Nielsen data becomes very helpful, I'd say that that's going to be after in month two after launch and the data drops, you'll get at least a snapshot initial feeling of the data. But I feel like month three after launch, so if you think about this month zero is launch, and then at the end of month one, end of month two, going to month three is where I'm going to start getting some early clues of what's going on. Is this working? Is it not? Am I seeing the growth I want between month one and month two? Am I getting to the goal velocity that the category manager gave me? Am I anywhere near it? Right? That's going to be a great time to dig into that. If I don't have spins and or Nielsen for this account, I would just try to impute the data by looking at that sell-in data, which is what I can get. For example, in this K example, I can see in general, I can see every store pulling product in that chain, and I could kind of figure, hey, if 5, 6 weeks in, what is the average velocity at those stores based on what they're rebuying from KeHE? And that analysis is a little bit more complex and a little bit less accurate, but directionally it should be accurate.
Good stuff. And I know we've got a bunch of questions coming, Luke, so I hope you're ready. We've got one from Gray here asking, are there any strategies to keep in mind when promoting as a super premium brand in a hyper
Mm.
competitive category?
Yeah, it's so hard, right? There's two sides, right? To keep the super premium image, and keep the respect of the consumer. I can't be overly aggressive in my promotion because I'll start to devalue my brand. So a couple of things are, in almost no case would I ever want to promote any brand more than every other month. So I would never want to go back to back. That starts to in my opinion, undermine the consumer's perceived value of the brand. The other part too is that I've noticed that consumers have become more risk adverse since this time of inflation and feeling like there's so much strain on budgets. And so if let's say I have an olive oil that the I would call the mass product is 14.99, 13.99 on the shelf, and mass premium is 19.99, and I'm super premium at like 24.99. Maybe I promote down so I come down into in that area of mass premium as opposed to super premium. So maybe I drop it down $4 or $5, and then it's like, oh, as I'm a mass premium consumer, can I and I'm seeing the set and I'm comfortable with a certain price range. I might maybe I give that for your product a shot, and then ideally fall in love with it and can never go back. And now I'm willing to pay $5 more for it. It really depends on the product, the price points we're talking about, but it'd be happy to talk to you on the side specific to your product.
Great. Okay, we got one from Lee, wondering how you all might look at cannibalization of current SKUs while launching new innovation.
Oh yeah, it's so important. We had a client who had a chicken SKU and then had a fajita chicken SKU, and we were really curious what was going to happen. Different use case. One was a ground and one's more like a strip. And we were very careful to look at what happened to the velocities on the original chicken SKU as that fajita SKU is launching. And we saw it was like maybe 3 or 4%, 5% cannibalization. And but overall, we were hitting for all four SKUs now on the shelf. We were hitting the goal velocity from that category manager. And we overall for our brand, even for our point of view, we were generating more dollars. If it was four SKUs originally, we added one more to get to five. We roughly added 1/5 more in terms of our total volume in the store. So if I did launch something and I saw a lot of cannibalization, I would, again, being a good steward of my space on the shelf, I'd be really aware of that and maybe look at an alternative SKU to launch that would have less cannibalization, so I don't end up having one of those SKUs discontinued and losing that space on shelf.
Good, good. Okay. We got one from Philip. Could you expand on strategies for the new product development process, how to get to market quicker, validating sooner, etc.?
Yeah. Oh, interesting. That's a really deep discussion area, and what comes up for me is validating sooner would be getting it on a shelf. In fact, when I worked at Jimbo's as president, we talked about doing this. We talked to some brands. You know, Jimbo said, "Hey, why don't you bring your innovation to us?" And that's kind of how they operate anyway. The sooner I can get something and test it at a like at a Jimbo's, which is like that's going to capture the idea of like what a Whole Foods consumer sensibility would be, right? So I think testing in these smaller retailers and maybe even a region can be a really good way to test something and make sure it's right before I take the gamble of bringing it to like Sprouts nationally or Whole Foods nationally or the Fresh Market. I call this strategy, it's called bullets before cannonballs. Bullets are super cheap. And so I want to shoot the bullets. That's like being in Jimbo's, right? And then before once I hit the target and I verified it, then I shoot the cannonball and then I go into the Whole Foods and Sprouts with it, where the cost of failure is so much higher.
Yeah, and I think this next question coming from Tony is kind of a segue from what Philip just asked. He's saying we just launched in 135 Whole Foods. How long does the category manager give a small brand to get their velocity to an acceptable level? Following up with that, the products are refrigerated plant-based mayo made from avocado. So just the
Ooh, yum.
refrigerated condiment category as far as that goes.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it really depends on the category manager, right? And I've had category managers, I think I'm actually in front of Sprouts right now, where I asked Sprouts on a SKU, like, hey, what's your goal? What's your target? Like, you know what? I really don't have a goal. I just really wanted to see if I could claim a new consumer. And so again, number one thing is finding out what that goal is, that they have it. Generally, if we are seeing progress toward that goal, month one, let's say the goal is 6. Month one, we're at 2. We're just getting on shelf. There's distribution challenges and everything. Month two, we're seeing 3, 3.5, and then the next month we're seeing 3.754. Like generally, not always, that's gonna work, and it's always good to check in with your category manager to make sure that they're feeling good about the trajectory. And I'll give you an example where that didn't work out with a brand in Meyer this last week. We were on the shelf for 3 months. We got kicked out, and we had just done a data deep dive the week before. And that deep dive, we say, hey, the trajectory is great. Like we're like halfway to the goal, 3 months in. There was a category manager shift, a change, and the new category manager just didn't like what we were doing apparently. So I just want to be clear that everything I'm sharing here is never a rule. It's just an idea what generally has worked.
Great, great. And I know we're close on time, and while we're waiting to see if we have some more questions, I've been teasing this that maybe we might do this, and I'm making an executive decision. Luke, in honor of you giving me a promotion, by the way, thank you. This week, I'm making an executive decision that we're going to give a discount. As many of you know, Vdriven does a lot of different services. We do deduction management. We do accounting services, both on an hourly basis. We do a lot of consulting work. We do sales and brand management. Other people call it brokering. We can call it whatever we'd like, but we do that service too. But something I think would be beneficial to a large part of the people we're talking to, Luke, we do something on the consulting side that I'll let you touch on. That's called a deep dive. And I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the specifics behind it. But the executive decision that I'm making is that we give a discount on that service. So if anyone I don't know, today's Thursday, the 20th. Let's say anybody that reaches out to us by Friday of next week, and mentions that they were on the webinar
Mm,
today with you and
yeah.
I, and we offer them a 30% discount on that service. And just, just in the, just in the spirit of data
Mhm.
and talking about, getting into the weeds a little bit in a deep dive to talk about it. Tell the audience a little bit of what the
Mhm.
deep dive, what you cover, on the,
Yeah.
and I should say too,
Mhm.
it might be someone else on the team because we have several people on our team that do these
Mhm.
sessions. But talk a little bit about what we cover, and as it pertains to data as well.
Yeah, so it really depends on the data you have available. So if you're already buying spins, fantastic. If you're not, we do buy a lot of categories as well, and we can only see high level data, but that can be helpful. So always we'll have distributor data, at least for KHE. If you're not an SSA, once you're on SSA, or if you are buying the data via another means, then we'll have that data. Certainly, portal data for the Whole Foods, Wegmans, and other retailers, like Erewhon too, can be really helpful. But depending on what we have, we love to say, hey, how is this category as a whole doing? Is it growing or shrinking? And then we just kind of go from 50,000 feet to 20,000 feet. Here are the brands. Here's the competitive landscape. And then we try to dig into, like, who's winning, who's losing, where do we stand, and then digging into specific key accounts. So if you want to look at Sprouts and Whole Foods and Fresh Time and Fresh Market, and depending on the data sources, we can create a pretty detailed idea of like, are we winning or losing in these accounts, and hey, how's our promotional strategy going? A lot of the graphs that I showed you were graphs that Audrey from our team repurposed, ambiguated, so we wouldn't know who the brand is. But those are often slides we go through in these deep dives. I think the probably the biggest value I see is the promotional analysis. If again, we think that the average CPG brand is spending 16 to 22% on the channel costs between gross sales and net sales. If we can figure out how to do that more efficiently on a promotional spend or using EDLPs or whatever we need to do, that can be extremely valuable. We usually spend 3 hours just really digging into to a brand. And at the end, we often talk for like 30, 40 minutes about strategy. What do we do next? What are the next steps?
Right, right. So as you can imagine, 3 hours with, is pretty significant. I know there's a question there, as far as the regular cost of the deep dive, and I don't know, Luke. We encourage you to reach out to us
Mm.
specifically. We're going to share this video on several formats, and prices might change over the years. So happy to answer the question, but we'll contact you privately to do that. Not that we won't be transparent, we absolutely will be. I just, if we use this seminar a year from
Well,
now, we want to be able to talk about,
yeah. Well,
where we're
wait,
at, right?
but wait, the cost also changes a little bit depending on whether we have spends data or not, right? Because if we don't, then we have to do a little bit more work in trying to transform the data coming from distributors to make it work for our deep
Exactly.
dive.
Exactly. And look at this. We have Steve Beckman from Designology, in the audience. He said your clients have used our consumer research platform in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd include it in the offer you just made. We'll honor a 30% discount on a pivot test if you want to add that into the deep dive you just offered them. So we'll package that with Steve. That's a great offer from Steve at Designology. I know, Luke, we refer
Yep.
clients to them, and we really appreciate that as well. We have a little bit more time for questions, if there's any more out there. Or Luke, anything that we didn't touch on? I know I could probably throw a couple things out there, but I'll ask you first if there's anything that you'd
No,
like to touch on.
first off is I believe we make this available afterwards, and I know that I had a lot of content to go through, and if I spoke at like 1.5x, so feel free to watch it on YouTube again at like 0.75. That will make it probably more digestible. But wait, I'm open to any questions you have.
Yeah, I don't have questions per se. I want to remind everyone that, Luke, you do a podcast. It's called the Reconnected Podcast,
Mm.
and again, this is all just in the spirit of sharing, a lot of what we do as an organization at Vdriven. But Luke and I typically do one of these webinars once a month, if not more. It's always free. It's all about the spirit of community. Luke does the Reconnected podcast, that is very regular as well, and he's talked to many people in the space as far as on the distribution side, buyers, just all over the place. I'd encourage you to check that out. That link's in the chat. I also do, many of you know CPG Vibes. I do that every Friday with my co host, Alex Bear. The link to the past episodes is in the chat, and you can also join us live on LinkedIn every Friday. But I think a large part of this, again, is just the community mindset, helping emerging brands, educating emerging brands, and just growing together. And yeah, I think that's we're getting. We might have one more here from Hank. Luke, what's up,
Yes,
Hank?
Hank.
What's up, Hank? If we were to use Jimbos as our bullets, how engaged would you recommend a founder get? Would doing demos in store help or not? Luke, I could probably answer that one. I can take the pressure off you if you'd like.
Do it.
I would say, Hank, the best results I've seen at Jimbo's, and for those of you that don't know, I spent some time there as well as the director of grocery. I see great engagement with the founders, and Hank, I would reference you to talk to some friends in the space like Annie. Annie's done demos there. I know Tal's done a lot of demos there. But I think really, no one's going to sell the product like yourself. And you telling your story, the marketing opportunities are endless at both Jimbo's and yourself, that you can use and repurpose across your social media. And it's just really helps you build that community and get support behind your brand. I don't know, Luke, do you have any thoughts beyond that?
100%. And I'm thinking of another brand that you and I both know, Wade, that a client of ours who we got into Erewhon as their kind of first retailer. And they actually moved across the country into an Airbnb for 3 months to literally do the demos and be on it and be connecting and interfacing with the Erewhon stores and just hit like number two or three out of like 20 brands in the set, like out of the gate. And so it's like, what a story, right? And then knowing that like people that's validation for sure. And certainly getting feedback live as a founder from people trying your product is huge as well, right? And honestly soliciting honest feedback, not just, wanting people to validate you, but like tell me really like what do you like about this? What could I do
Right.
better? Really valuable.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, and I see Mac from I Eat My Greens mentions he's done his demos, totally worth it. But that Airbnb, would you have to look at that whole thought process? It's an investment, right? And when you talked earlier in the presentation with regards to owning a region, right? And you had specifically up there like Jimbo's and Gelson's and Erewhon's, and the example you gave of the client that's doing that, she's investing, right? I mean, yes,
Hmm.
you're moving across the country, you're staying here for a month, whatever, even if it's a week. But if you can hit in Jimbo's situation,
Yes.
you've got 4 stores, a week's worth of Airbnbs, and you do a couple demos at each store and can really just drive that, repurpose the marketing, and use that as a mindset with regards to marketing, building community, feedback, market checking. Markets in the area as well, and perhaps even doing a couple door knocks while you're here, as far as trying to get in and meet some of the people that are working in those locations. I think it would be time well spent.
Agreed. Agreed.
We are very close on time here. Luke, any closing comments aside? Like I said, we've got the QR code here to scan to join our community. That's where we email people that when we're doing events like this, or just announcements, things like that. I encourage you to sign up if you haven't already. The podcast links are in here. Anything we missed, Luke, or any closing comments?
No, just thank you everybody for being here. I pray that I created value for you. And if you need anything ever, you can reach out to Wade and me anytime. We're here to serve.
Great. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.